Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true.
You're watching American DA Live, and I'm Alexandra Harper. On today's episode, Jack Patty, Ray the DA, and Assistant Commonwealth Attorneys Kathy Phillips and Tyler Forsyth will discuss the case of Toby Lazier. Back in 2009, Chris Tolliver came to Lexington Green to meet his boyfriend Toby Lazier. He thought it was going to be a normal breakup conversation between the two of them, but Toby ended up shooting Chris in the head and killing him. After Chris was dead, Toby led police on a 3-hour chase through Lexington, ending with a standoff. Stay tuned for more details on this case.
This edition of American DA Live, we've got another local story that is really a story that has been unfolding in our press and the local newspapers and television, radio just in the last few weeks. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Jack.
Tell us our case this morning.
Well, this is, murder cases get their own names. And this one is called the Lexington Green murder case because people remember that part. Sometimes they forget the names of the people involved. Toby Lazier, on March the 5th, 2009, was in the process, or Chris Tolliver, his victim, was in the process of breaking up a relationship, and Toby Lazier just didn't seem to want to have any part of that, and so he went out to the parking lot of Lexington Green where Chris Tolliver was and shot and killed him.
Right in the middle of the day.
That's right, and I can remember that being on the news, and we have a conference room and a library, and from 12 to 1 it's a lunchroom in our office, and we have a big television. People watch the news, and I can remember all of this kind of stuff happening. And so, at any rate, that's the nature of the case, and when we get a case like that, we immediately assign it to somebody, and it's always going to be one of our experienced prosecutors, and that was, in this case, was Kathy Phillips, and Kathy is sort of an obsessive-compulsive preparer, which is what we look for in prosecutors, and assigned to assist her in this case is Tyler Forsyth, who is, we recruited. She's from Lexington, and she went to the University of Alabama, so she takes a little abuse during the various seasons.
And should.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she went to the University of Alabama Law School. She was working for a friend of mine in Birmingham. It's Jefferson County, Alabama District Attorney, David Barber, and we recruited her because she wanted to come back to town, and we wanted her to come back to town, and we're very fortunate she's here, and she jumped in to assist Kathy in the prosecution of this case.
Did you get the signing bonus, Tyler?
I wish.
Welcome, glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And Kathy, it's
So,
always good to see you.
The investigator of this case is Detective Todd Iddings, and Todd is unable to be with us today, but as I said, Kathy is pretty obsessive-compulsive in her preparation. She probably more than Todd does. So let's talk about this case a little bit, Kathy. Tell us what happened out at the Lexington Green.
Well, it was March 5th, 2009, and it was actually a beautiful afternoon, and there were a lot of people at Lexington Green, as there usually is on a day like this. Basically what happened was people were going about their normal day, and they hear gunshots. A couple witnesses they're all seeing it from different views and different angles, but one of our main witnesses in this case and in the trial actually has military experience and understands gunshots and how they sound like, and immediately recognized it as a gunshot. So we had a few different witnesses from different angles look up and see and actually observe as Toby Lazier shot and killed Chris Tolliver. So that's kind of unusual in our murder cases to actually have eyewitnesses there at the scene and actually see the murder happen. So
Were people scrambling, I assume?
Not really,
No?
because it was just shocking and so unexpected. It was more just a, oh my gosh, I just saw someone get shot. So everyone starts calling 911, and then the defendant fled the scene, leaving Chris lying there in the middle of the parking lot. So people go up and begin to help Chris, and calling into 911, and basically a car chase begins in Lexington. So that's how it started.
Jack, there are almost always witnesses to shootings, but seldom do we have people that don't have some sort of felony record or that sort of thing that are witnesses, or people all of a sudden get blind and they say they didn't see anything, and those are some of the issues. But in this case, if you're going to pick a place to shoot somebody in the middle of a parking lot where there are responsible people around, it's probably not your best bet. Introduce us to Chris Tolliver, the victim in this case, Kathy, and then introduce us to the defendant, Toby Leisure.
Sure. Chris Tolliver was a lovely man. Chris had a tremendous talent in the field of music, and went to UK and studied music and worked at the Lexington Children's Theater. He was working on a project, the Colonel Sanders project in his hometown. A very loved, a very caring man. His family was, we became very close to his family throughout this as we got to know Chris. The defendant, Toby Leisure, was actually in a relationship with someone else and had been for quite some time. He had met Chris at the gym. They both worked out, and they started dating. We aren't 100% clear, of course, because Chris can't tell us exactly how this relationship ended, but we know that Toby Leisure went back to his partner, but was still maintaining some sort of relationship with Chris. And we know this because we subpoenaed their phone records and their text records, which tell us a lot in cases.
This gets back to this business. Technology is becoming far more important in the investigation of crimes these days.
And we also had statements that Chris had made to his family and to his friends, but of course we weren't allowed to use those statements in trial because the victim's statements are hearsay, which is problematic.
Statements such as?
Such as he was trying to break it off with someone, but he was having a hard time. He wasn't getting the message. And then he even made some statements to his sister that he was fearful something bad was going to happen, and kind of talked about, if something happens to me, these are things that I want you to do, and these are things I'm worried about. But nothing that was, none of the statements met the elements that could have made them exceptions to hearsay so that we could have used them. So we knew this stuff, but we weren't allowed to use the stuff in the trial, these kind of statements. So we knew that he was trying to break up with him, and for whatever reason, the breakup hadn't really happened. Then we have Toby Leisure, who makes a lot of statements. He made statements to several people throughout the day, and after he shot and killed Chris, he made several statements. All of his statements we were allowed to use.
Can you tell the story that what happened with the chase and how he was apprehended?
Absolutely. After he fled the scene, he's in his car. We had the license plate number to the car, so officers immediately start looking for the car. He's over in the area of Reading Road when Sergeant McBride spotted the car and immediately put it out on the radio, and other police officers, start responding. They decide to do a felony stop outside of the area where there were a lot of people around because they were around a party at the time. So he begins to do a felony stop on the vehicle Toby Leisure's driving.
What does a felony stop mean?
It means you can pull it over and stop them and investigate them and try to arrest them at that point.
You can search the car, is that what that means?
Well, stop him.
Just stop him, okay.
Stop him and get him out, and, leads to an arrest.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, Toby Leisure pulls over like he's going to stop, and then he takes off. He begins a high-speed chase outbound Tates Creek Road, Now our officers have on their lights and sirens and are trying to pull them over. The defendant speeds up, is going up to 90 miles per hour. He does a U-turn on Tates Creek Road. He's going through the middle of 2 lanes of traffic, takes off up New Circle Road, is like 90 to 100, and the officer still can't catch up to him. Traffic's spreading, traffic's going into the median. It's a high-speed chase around New Circle Road. He veers off and takes the exit onto Alumni, flies out that way, ends up on Manowar, does another U-turn, going down Manowar, goes to the lights at Richmond Road. He's speeding down Manowar, and then ends up in the parking lot at the Ridge. That's where his partner works, so that's why he was going there. But he ends up in the parking lot at the Ridge, and at this point, we just have hundreds of people responding, every officer on duty. People are being called in that weren't on duty yet. So this is a huge situation now out at the Ridge.
And they know he's armed.
They know he's armed because he
Yeah.
just shot somebody.
Right.
So we have a standoff basically at the Ridge. The hostage negotiators are called in, and Officer Ricky Lynn, who's been trained in negotiations, begins negotiations with him. And they're out there for, was it about 3 hours, Tyler?
Yes, 3 hours.
About 3 hours in a standoff situation where Officer Lynn is trying to get him to put down the gun and turn himself in. He's in his car the whole time waving his gun around, clearly a risk to himself and others during the standoff situation.
Did they have to evacuate the hospital?
They did not evacuate the Ridge. They were evacuating everyone nearby. Richmond Place is right there across the street.
Right.
So they're not evacuating, but moving everybody out of harm's way. They're making sure there's several, there's an apartment complex right there across the street. Everyone, the roads are closed off. Everyone's just put in a place where, to make sure they're out of harm's way. Because we know someone's armed and dangerous in the standoff at the Ridge, which is a very busy area of town. So it was a heightening and very escalating situation.
When did your
To hear the whole
office get-
program, click below or tune in every Friday morning at 9 a.m. on WVLK News Talk 590.